At the beginning of the movie, a boy named Greg is suddenly woken up late at night by his older brother Roderick, who tells him that he is already late for school. Greg immediately rushes to get ready, making noise and accidentally waking up the entire house. When his father comes downstairs, Greg continues preparing, only to later realize during breakfast that Roderick was lying and had tricked him. It becomes clear that Greg is constantly being annoyed by both Roderick and his younger brother, Manny. Soon after, Greg heads to his first day of middle school. As he walks through the hallway, he sees complete chaos, with students running around and vandalizing the place. The environment feels overwhelming, especially since most of the students are bigger, stronger, and more intimidating than him. However, he feels some relief when he notices Chirag Gupta, the shortest student in the class. Inside the classroom, Greg meets Rowley, who still behaves like a little kid and hasn't fully adjusted to middle school life. Rowley can often be seen playing childish games and acting immature compared to the other students. Greg ends up sitting next to him as the class begins. Later, the students are taken outside for physical education. While the rest of the class participates, Greg and Rowley sit on a bench, clearly uninterested. A strange classmate named Fregly approaches them, known for his poor hygiene and frequently being sent home because of it. Shortly after, Coach Malone arrives and introduces a game called Gladiator. The students are divided into two teams, where one group chases the other and tries to knock them down. After struggling to keep up, Greg and Rowley manage to escape the field and hide under the school stairs. There, they meet Angie, a female student who has been skipping PE by hiding in the same place. She explains that she spends the entire class under the stairs and invites them to stay. However, as soon as they hear the coach's whistle, Greg and Rowley decide to leave. While walking away, they notice a piece of cheese lying on the ground nearby. Greg bends down to take a closer look at it. Greg is suddenly stopped by Chirag, who warns him not to touch the cheese. Chirag explains an incident known as the cheese touch, where a student once touched the cheese and instantly became an outcast at school. Eventually, that student touched someone else, passing the curse along. Soon, the entire school was affected, with students turning against each other in fear of catching it. The chaos finally ended when a German exchange student touched the cheese and later returned to his country, taking the curse with him. Sometime later, Greg goes to the school bathroom and notices that the stalls have no doors. In the cafeteria, he is unable to find an empty seat, so he ends up sitting on the floor alongside Rowley and Fregly. After school, some students begin bullying Greg after finding out that he is friends with Rowley. Back at home, Greg takes Rowley into his older brother Roderick's room and starts reading Roderick's school magazine. Their actions soon attract Roderick's attention, and he returns, threatening them. Greg manages to escape into his room and locks the door with Rowley's help. After a while, Greg needs to use the bathroom and tries apologizing to Roderick, who is standing outside the door. Time passes, and Roderick's boots remain visible through the gap under the door. When Greg finally opens the door, he realizes that Roderick has already left, leaving only his boots behind. Greg rushes to the bathroom and starts peeing, but suddenly Roderick appears from behind the shower curtain. Startled, Greg ends up peeing all over him. At that moment, their mother arrives and Greg is once again punished for his actions. The next day at school, Greg and Rowley check the notice board and discover various classroom activities students can sign up for. Around the same time, Greg's old nemesis, Patty, shows up and threatens him after announcing that she is running for student council president, still holding a grudge because Greg once made fun of her appearance. Soon after, Angie appears and suggests that Greg should write articles for the school magazine. However, Greg and Rowley ignore her advice and instead decide to sign up for wrestling. Later, when they enter the wrestling room, they quickly realize that it is nothing like what they had imagined. Coach Malone then divides the students based on their body weight, which results in Greg being paired against Fregly. As the match begins, Greg is repeatedly hit by Fregly throughout every round, leaving him completely humiliated in front of everyone. Greg tries to eat more food in hopes of gaining weight so he can face Rowley as his next wrestling opponent, while Roderick advises him to avoid participating in any activities. Their father, however, encourages Greg to train harder and perform well in the upcoming match. Later, Greg cleverly adds weights to his shoes to appear heavier and get into Rowley's group. He succeeds, but his new opponent turns out to be Patty, who had already defeated him before. Greg is comprehensively beaten again, and to make matters worse, his loss is featured on the front page of the school magazine. Following this, Greg becomes widely infamous and looks for a way to become popular. He dresses in formal attire and walks down the hallway, attracting attention. However, his excitement fades when he discovers that Rowley is wearing the same outfit, leading the entire class to mock them, joking that they are in love. Realizing that he is constantly failing because of Rowley's outdated style, Greg decides to give him a complete makeover. He revamps Rowley's wardrobe, teaches him how to act cool, and even paints his bicycle black. The next morning, Rowley appears looking much more stylish. Later that night, Rowley comes to Greg's house wearing a humorous king costume with a red blinker on his chest, while Greg dresses as a pirate as they celebrate Halloween together. Greg and Rowley plan to walk through the neighborhoods of wealthy families to collect candies and chocolates. Roderick scares them by warning that a forest called Devil Worshipper Wood lies along the way, where children are supposedly abducted. Despite his story, the boys continue to the neighborhood and gather many treats. On their way back, they are bullied by some teenagers driving by. Greg threatens to report them to the police, which enrages the teenagers and prompts them to chase the duo. Greg and Rowley narrowly escape into Greg's grandmother's house. During the chase, Greg accidentally scratches the bully's car with a weed eater, further angering them. The boys run for their lives and end up in Devil Worshipper Wood, where they hear strange noises and immediately flee, only to discover that the sounds were caused by Heffley. The next day at school, Greg and Rowley join the safety patrols, thinking it is another exciting activity. They receive bold outfits, shining badges, and even enjoy a cup of cocoa while helping younger students cross the road. During the afternoon, they spot the same teenagers from the previous night driving nearby, but manage to hide by blending in with the other children. Months pass, and winter arrives. One day, Greg and Rowley are playing outside in the snow when Rowley falls into a pile of snow and breaks his hand. Surprisingly, his broken hand turns into a ladder to popularity. Many schoolgirls find him funny and invite him to have lunch at their table. Rowley quickly becomes admired and treated as a cool kid, which makes Greg jealous. He attempts to fake an infection in his own hand to gain sympathy, but fails. Later, Greg learns that the school magazine's cartoonist is sick, leaving a vacancy. He decides to gain fame by creating cartoons and begins practicing at home, but struggles to develop a concrete idea. He calls Rowley for help, who suggests a funny character named Zoo Wee Mama. Greg rejects the idea, calling it boring and repetitive, and tells Rowley to make the cartoon himself. One afternoon, Greg borrows Rowley's raincoat to escort younger students home. He notices a car approaching in the heavy rain and mistakes it for the same teenagers from before. He quickly leads the juniors into a hole for safety, but is spotted by a security guard who mistakes him for Rowley because of the raincoat. Meanwhile, Rowley is declared the new cartoonist for the school magazine because of his comic Zoo Wee Mama, which boosts his popularity among students and teachers alike. Greg, however, remains unnoticed and frustrated. Later, while walking down the hallway with Rowley, the school security officer takes Rowley to his office and removes him from the safety patrol. The school security officer accuses Rowley of misbehaving with the younger students, leaving him stunned and confused. Greg then admits to Rowley that he was the one responsible. Devastated, Rowley ends their friendship, and news of Greg's actions quickly spreads throughout the school. Greg is boycotted by everyone and becomes isolated. The security officer also learns about Greg's misbehavior and removes him from his duties, promoting Rowley to captain for his generosity and kindness. As time passes, Greg attempts various ways to surpass Rowley in popularity, but his lack of friends and support discourages him. He briefly visits Fregley's house but quickly leaves after being disgusted by Fregley's dirty habits. Later, Greg auditions for a role in the school play. His singing impresses the selector, earning him the prime role. However, Patty intervenes, threatening the selector with her influential parents, and is given the lead role, relegating Greg to play a tree. Initially disappointed, Greg agrees to the role when Chirag points out that trees can throw apples at Patty. On the evening of the school play, the event begins smoothly with all the parents in attendance. However, when Greg spots his brother filming his humiliation, he stops performing, disrupting the show. Patty becomes furious at Greg, and chaos ensues on stage, with students fighting and throwing apples at each other. The next morning, Roderick brings a crumpled invitation card that Greg had thrown away. The invitation is for Greg's mother to attend a mother and son sweetheart dance. That evening, despite Greg's refusal, the family decides he must attend, which makes him furious. In retaliation, Greg slips adult magazines into Roderick's bag. Their mother discovers this and punishes Roderick by grounding him for weeks and taking away his car keys. That night, Greg and his mother attend the dance. Greg tries to reunite with Rowley but fails. During the dance, Rowley performs impressively with his mother, stealing the show. The next morning, Rowley comes to Greg's house to retrieve a video game he left there. Greg refuses to return it, and tensions rise. Patty arrives and encourages them to start a fight. Meanwhile, the teenagers from Halloween night show up and begin bullying them. Rowley is forced to eat a piece of foul cheese, and when it is Greg's turn, Coach Malone arrives and chases the bullies away. Afterward, all the students come outside and discover that the foul cheese has been eaten. Before they can blame Rowley, Greg takes responsibility. This terrifies the other students, who flee, claiming that Greg has the cheese touch. Rowley and Angie, however, stay with him. Rowley reconciles with Greg, and they agree to play video games at Greg's house. Later, Patty delivers the school book to all the students, but refuses to give one to Greg, believing he has the cheese touch. Unaware of the truth, she embraces Rowley. Meanwhile, Greg and Rowley manage to place themselves in the cutest friends section of the school book.